Blessings of the way, my dear friends. I come to you as Japa Ananda Marga, a name that has been given to me after my spiritual revelation, which has really been the turning point of my life thus far. I want to share with you some teachings that have been bestowed upon me and in many ways have allowed me to see life in a new light. In many ways, it was as if the life that I was living before wasn't alive, and all of a sudden I've had the veil lifted off me to be able to see with ultimate clarity what is the happening of life. Now, this does not lead to any definite conclusions, but it leads to a certain sense of surety and trust in the happenings and the ways of how things unfold. I speak to you here from the island of Kauai, deep in the Central Pacific in Hawaii. And how I got here is really a spiritual pull. After 29 years of growing up in the hustle and bustle and living a life of goals, of pillar to post, of trying to prove to myself in many ways that I was worthy, I found myself at a juncture which was revealed to myself, not something that I was seeking, but most definitely I can see how the personal frustration led the universe to come in and reveal to me that there was a certain way in which I was conducting my life that was somehow depleting. And I think many of us will get to that point. And those of us who are privileged have to be able to see that in a way which is blessed. It's only been about 2 weeks since that calling came to me. And to be honest, I've had a lot of dark thoughts because the previous self, the only self that I knew my entire life, was slowly dying. And the new man, the new person, the deep longing that I've always had was rising to the surface and slowly enveloping my entire being and ultimately stewarding my being. And that's really what's brought me the courage to be able to do this video for all of you today. I don't think I've always lacked courage in the sense of being able to speak in front of many people or being able to express myself, but I definitely have had my moments where, out of the fear of not being loved or the lack of worthiness of oneself, that I held myself back. And I can remember many times where I didn't speak up, and I could feel that energy within me just constricting and suffocating me. And as with anything, if you keep building that habit, it will form a part of you in a certain sense that will just allow subconscious programming to take over, and it moves very deep out of your awareness. But there is always a greater force that is working in our favor. And I know man is at a juncture where he is fighting himself consistently. And we see that in many ways. We see that in war. We see that in, in inflicted suffering. We see that in inequity. We see that in the very design of the system that is pervading our society today. There's so much separateness. And that separateness really comes from our lack of understanding of our own nature. Over the last 10 or 12 days, as difficult as it has been for me to really come to terms with the fact that the old man is dying, um, I've been able to see a market shift over, let's say, the last couple of days, where I have not seen this process so much as sadness, but more as um, a trustworthy process that is yet to really reveal its entirety. And I know our society is fixated on making conclusions about the way things are, and kind of setting ourselves up to live from moment to moment, not in between the moments as much. And I think this is very much mind induced. And if we allow ourselves to free ourselves from what we feel is, a certain sense of obligation of the way we should be, or the things we ought to do, or the people we ought to please, then I think we'll come to a deeper sense of understanding that life is very much revealed to you. And if you can tap into higher forces, they will lead you the right way. Now, post this revelation, um, do I see a difference between uh, my view on life and the moments where pre-revelation I had, um, you know, you know, moments of self-awakening? Yes, because this is more consistent. This has now become my worldview in a lot of ways, and is increasingly becoming my worldview. So I think the advice that I have to give to all of you is to really just allow yourselves to be in touch with your own energy and understand when you're feeling forced. And ask yourself why. Ask yourself if it is something that is something you're capable of unraveling in that moment, or how much of it are you capable of unraveling in that moment. Um, we have a tendency to really blame and put responsibility on things outside of ourselves, but that really isn't the case. And I can tell you that, in having this revelation, I always thought that, I had to leave everything behind me. I had to leave my old life. I had to leave, at times, the people that I love the most. And that really isn't the case. Because when you elevate yourself in your consciousness, you're able to see things for just the way that they are. There's no judgment. There's less self-judgment, and as a result, there's less judgment, And so that's when really one is able to understand the beginning depths of compassion, because there's really there's no way of separating oneself from one's experience, and in that sense, we all are just operating from the awareness that we have in that moment. And so I think if we can look within and really understand that we ought not to judge ourselves for where we are, and that could be in the places that we're living and the jobs we feel that we have to have in order to keep up with the lifestyle that we have, or whether it's the surroundings that we're in. We are always working from a place, and so long as we can recognize that that place is a veritable fact, then we can start to steward the change that we want. And I'm really privileged to be here talking to you. I've really been called to share the teachings of wisdom to the extent that they pass on to me, and to the extent that my observation and experience permit them to be revealed to me. Because I've suffered with many traumas, as all of us have, and I see myself being able to really work through them in a way that doesn't allow me to isolate or see myself as separate from anything. Now, does that mean that there are still likes and dislikes? Definitely, but not to the extent where there's no love. And I think if we get to a point with ourselves where we can really love everything, but also understand that maybe some things aren't for us, we can really come to embrace everything for what it is, and we can then start living in between those moments. We can then start seeing our life as a journey. We can then start seeing things as evolutionary. We can stop giving our attachments so much power, because as I've realized, um, in the nihilistic teachings that I often used to um, prescribe to, that attachments are really what we dub them to be. They're really what power we allow them to have over us. I mean, definitely we do come and become conditioned with certain surroundings and certain relationships that, really paint uh, a great part of our experience, and then perhaps allow us to only see life through those prisms. But really, they're not us. And the minute we can detach, not in the sense of severing, but in the sense of really um, taking our power back and allowing a certain higher guidance to come through and permit us to live a much more fulfilling life, then we can really distinguish between attachment in the colloquial sense of the word and attachment in the sense of, uh, you know, something that we just use in the moment. So this is the beginning of my journey in my new life, and um, that's why, many of you who know me from the previous chapter would say, "Oh, he looks so different," and um, but shaving my head is a mark of vulnerability. Not only that, but it has a relevance to my journey. I think the reason why I'm here is because I've been suffering with a skin condition for almost 9.5 years now, and it's been very um, difficult at times for me to really understand the causes. Um, there are many tips, there are many things that have worked for me. I've been able to reduce my condition by over 80%. Sticking to a very clean diet, uh, barefoot walking, staying in touch with nature, and really allowing my intuition to guide me. Um, and of course, I went back into an environment which was not conducive to those things, and um, thinking that potentially um, I could carry the wisdom that I had gained uh, from spending many months in nature and eating a very clean diet. But there was an emotional level to my healing, and I think the divine revealed that to me uh, just about 2 weeks ago, where he said to me that I'm really not living my purpose, and I'm really not living the way that I want to live. And I'm in many ways living for others, but living for others is preventing them for living for themselves, because um, out of fear, we're focused on keeping some status quo together, as if without that we would be all right. And we don't know until we try. But the important thing is that when the call for evolution happens, that we allow it to happen. Because if you're really in touch with your own energy, you will find that it will be a pulling sensation that you cannot resist. And through the fear of the unknown is more comfort with uncertainty. But so long as we trust in the guidance that we are given, we will prevail. So these are the few conclusions and revelations that have been given to me. And I see myself in this channel being a channel for higher consciousness, and want all of you to know that whatever I share is simply a function of my observation and my experience. It may or may not be relevant for you, but the important thing is to always ask yourself and ask your heart whether or not it feels right. And to the extent that it can help you and make your path easier or more enlivening or just more inclusive. Um, I think that's the greatest gift that I can be given, and um, and the greatest gift that we can share together. Because I think we do have a responsibility to make sure that in whatever way, shape, or form, we ensure that we move things in the direction of a higher vibration, in love and harmony. And I believe we could see the awakening happening world over. So I've just been called to play the little part that I have been called for, and you know, um, I want all of you to know that all this is shared with the intention that we take the world one step higher from where it is today. So thank you all for listening, for taking the time to follow me, and may the blessings be with all of you.